Hey there, what's up everybody? My name is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of this book. I'm gonna keep it in. I'm the author of these books, Jazz Piano Fundamentals. Book 1, Book 2, and then, this is going so bad, Playing Solo Jazz Piano, which is just now out in a new edition. We're loose today, totally loose. If you're interested in that new edition, check out jeremysiskind.com. Especially if you've already purchased the book, I've created a pay what you want option for the new content so that you don't have to buy the book all over again. Final announcement is that I offer a 32-session jazz class through my community college. It's ridiculously cheap for 32 sessions. It costs like the amount of 2 private lessons with me. You could take it wherever you are. It's remote. And the semester will start January 23rd. Registration takes longer than it should. So if you are interested, you really probably need to register like ASAP. If you're interested, jeremysiskind.com/jazz class will give you all the info. Now, today, I wanted to show you the way that I think about the different categories of jazz voicing. We're not going to get into every single detail that we possibly can about jazz voicings, but hopefully this gives you a framework to understand them. Some of you might disagree about the way that I'm categorizing things, but that's totally fine. So just to be clear about what I mean by jazz voicings, a voicing is an organization and arrangement of notes. It's not particular to the type of chord necessarily, although we have to make some adjustments sometimes. It's not an inversion. Inversion is based on what the very lowest note that usually the bass is playing is doing. But it's how we want to present the notes of the chords at the piano. And so my kind of 3 categories of jazz voicings that I think about, the first one are type A, B voicings. And these are kind of related to the concept of shells. And I'll talk a little bit about that. The second type I call thickened line voicings. And the third type is modal voicings. And I will add like an extra kind of category for solo piano shared hands voicings. But that's maybe a little bit further than we want to go. Okay, so first category is type A, B voicings. I said it's related to shell voicing. So we're going to start with a friendly C major 7. Here's what it looks like in root position, right? So the whole concept of a shell, let's start there. A shell is taking just the essential tones of the chord. Essential tones are the 3rd and the 7th. There are some rare cases where a different note replaces an essential tone. If it's a 6th chord, the 6th replaces the 7th as an essential tone. And if it's a sus chord, the 4th replaces the 3rd as the essential tone. This is a major sus. It's more common to have a dominant sus. But we're sticking with C major 7. So this is what's known to many as a shell, or sometimes called a shell voicing. Now, the 3rd can either be below the 7th, as we have here, or the 7th can be below the 3rd. And the thing that's key to anything that we're going to call a type A, B voicing is that these 2 notes are positioned centrally. And what I mean by centrally is that we like to have them essentially right here in this range, with C3 right here being about the lowest, and with G4 being around the highest. And we want these 3rds and 7ths, if we're moving through the circle of 5ths, as we often are in tonal music, we want them to connect to one another. If you have those things, you're basically going to be making a type A-B voicing. A lot of the details can change, but that's really at the heart of things. So we call it, when the 3rd's below the 7th, like so, we would call this a type A position. When the 7th is below the 3rd, we call it a type B position. So one of the simplest kinds of type A, B voicings we can have is what we sometimes call a bass shell. And by the way, this is actually covered in the new edition of Playing Solo Jazz Piano, where you might have the bass. It's usually the root note, although sometimes it's the fifth. And then we have the shell. And this could be in this type A position, or it could be in the type B position. Notice that if I go below my C3 here, it starts sounding pretty low. We want it to be right in this kind of beautiful, meaty range. And so if I do a 2-5-1 from D minor 7 to G7 to C major, we're going to end up alternating between type A shells and type B shells. So here the third's below the seventh, seventh below the third, third's below the seventh. And those shells are really the important thing. I can change the bass notes. For instance, I could replace the root with a fifth, but you still hear the chord so strong. I could even replace the root with the flat fifth, but those shells are staying the same. I could replace other roots with fifths. It's those shells at the mid. Okay, so that's the concept of shells and type A, B. But we also, if we're playing with a bass player, we put the shell often as the lowest thing. Not always, but pretty often as the lowest thing. And then we can stack on top of it. So I teach these voicings as kind of classic 4-note type A, B voicing. So let me show you for C major. The bass would play C, and then the pianist would play this voicing. It's a type A shell with 2 color tones above it. Or I could take a type B shell with the same 2 color tones. And if I'm going to do a 2-5-1, again, I'm going to alternate between A and B shells, either starting with type A or starting with type B. We can build further and further on top of this. And this is how we start getting to 5, 6, 7 note jazz voicings. And I would still call them type A, B voicings. So here's 4-note 2-5-1. We could also do a 5-note 2-5-1. We could do a 6-note 2-5-1. In fact, I added a 7th note there. We could do all these sorts of additions to our 2-5-1s, to our shell voicings, adding 5, 6, like I said, total of 5, 6, 7 notes. But the overall concept remains the same. We're just adding color tones. So I think of them all in that framework of type A, B voicings. We can also add bass below. Right, here's type A shell. And so these are part of what I'm referring to as solo piano shared hands voicings. That if I'm playing, these seem like fancy voicings, but the bottom is still just the shell and the bass note. All right, so that's category 1, type A, B voicings, parentheses, shell. Category 2 is what I think of as thickened line voicings. And in these voicings, we're going to be harmonizing a melody. So let's say I'm harmonizing the C major scale. There's 2 really common ways we do this in a tonal sense in jazz piano. The first one is closed position voicings, sometimes known as shearing voicings. The second one is drop 2. We can also drop other things. We could drop 3, for example. So closed position voicings means that we're going to harmonize with an octave between the highest and lowest note. So if I'm playing the C major scale here, the lowest note is going to shadow it exactly in an octave. And I've made several videos. There's a lot of places. It's also in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2 here, exactly how you go about finding the inner parts of these chords. So I'm not going to dwell on it for too long here. But the most common way to do it sounds like this. Notice that this generally takes two hands. It doesn't like have to. You know, Errol Garner, you know, he can play those with one hand, and you know, a lot of pianists can to different degrees. But the most common kind of traditional way to play these are with the left hand playing one note and with the right hand playing four. Watch my hand division here. Drop two is very similar, except we're going to drop the second to highest note down by an octave and take out the doubling of the octave. So we have only a 4-note voicing, but now it spreads out for more than an octave. Most of these voicings have a third and a seventh in it, but notice the priorities shifted. So even if this voicing happens to have the third and the seventh in it, I don't think of it as a type A, type B voicing because my main priority here is harmonizing the melody. Okay. Now, where it gets really interesting is actually when we're playing, you know, kind of two-handed chords. What pianists are often doing is playing a type A, B voicing in their left hand. So for example, for C major, maybe this, maybe that, but I just got my third and seventh, the E and the B there, and then doing some version of a thickened line voicing in the right hand, right? I told you Errol Garner's, you know, can do those octaves in one hand, and a lot of people do some version of that. Different. I'm having to play an octave in one hand instead of being able to assist myself with my left hand. Even though that technique is different, the types of voicings we've kind of already covered. It's just combining two of them. All right, category 3 before everybody loses steam here is modal voicings. Okay, and modal voicings are somewhat similar to the thickened lines in that they can harmonize a melody. But what we're doing with modal voicings is we're selecting kinds of intervals and then placing them at different points in mode. So two very famous modal voicings are the so what voicing and the quartal voicing. The so what voicing associated with Bill Evans, and it's this pattern of 3/4, or we could say 4 notes organized in fourths, with a third on top. Now, the type of fourth and the type of third are going to change based on where I am in the mode. So if I'm in C major, C Ionian, if you want to use a fancy modal term, here I have an augmented fourth between these two notes and I have a minor third on top. But I can start this voicing anywhere in the mode. So I can go here and now I have all perfect fourths and a major third on top. Again, I have all perfect fourths and a major third. Oh, you can hear it really changed. And when we use these voicings, we might go back and forth between 2, 3, 4 of these different starting points. Oh, sorry, I should be in C. Why it's kind of similar to the thickened line approach. broader color rate. The thickened line approach, we are going to change the intervals. We're going to even change the type of chords between different melody notes. Here, we try to maintain those exact same intervals within a mode. So that's so what voicings. Quartal voicings are made up entirely of fourths. And we can stack all the way up to 6 notes in fourths. I guess that's 5 intervals of a fourth, 6 notes. And these are going to be, especially with this many notes, it's going to be pretty big and dissonant. But frequently we'll only stack maybe 4 or 5 notes. But it's very interesting that if I'm trying to express C major, not all of these chords really sound so much like C major, right? But the ones that do are the ones that place the 3rd and the 7th right in that magic range. So these are not like type A, type B voicings, but there's overlap, right? These are more Venn diagrams, and they are totally different categories. I want to share one more kind of voicing with you, because it actually, more than making me look good and confirming my theories, it kind of challenges this theory of 3 different kinds of voicings. Excuse me. Ooh. But I want to see if I can convince you, and these are pentatonic voicings. And these, instead of using a mode, they use the notes of the pentatonic scale. And I think of these as modal voicings because we can think of the pentatonic scale as a mode. So here's the notes of C pentatonic, and we can basically arrange them so that each different note is on bottom. And I'm always, a better way to think about this, I'm sorry, I'm doing a bad job teaching, is that we're going to be playing the pentatonic scale, but always skipping one note. And then starting it from each different note. And we'll always have 5 different notes. So to me, it's very much like modal voicings because we're starting the same scale from different places. But it's not the same in that here the intervals actually change. You can see here there's a 3rd on bottom, whereas here there's a 4th on bottom. Whereas here it's arranged entirely in fourths. And then on the last one, it's just like a so what voicing. 4 notes arranged in fourths with a 3rd on top. So to me, that's a little modal voicing with an asterisk. All right, you guys, that was a lot to take in, I know. But if you want to go it slower, I've got good news for you. You can go as slow as you want using these 3 books that I have for offer. You got Jazz Piano Fundamentals, Book 1, which will give you the basics, especially about type A-B voicings. You'll really get a good workout on 3 and 4 note type A-B voicings. Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 2 gives you more notes with your type A-B voicings and then talks about those thickened line voicings. And playing solo jazz piano talks for quite a while about shared hands voicings. So if you enjoyed this, if you're interested, I think you'll like those books. JeremySiskind.com, best place to buy them. Go capitalism. All right, you guys, thanks for watching.